Okay, savages. I get asked regularly, what books I read, what books I would recommend, and what speakers say I would recommend. But also Jordan Peterson. I get, every now and again I get asked, my views on him, or people assume that I like him. So I just thought I'd touch on those subjects before I forget, because I'm going to forget. There's three people that come to mind now that I respect and that I'm interested in and that I might listen to from time to time. One is Eckhart Tolle, obviously. The other is Shunya Murti, who's based in Costa Rica. And the third is Neil Kramer. Now, I'll start with the last. Neil Kramer, I first discovered, 15 years ago or thereabouts, on Red Ice Radio, a podcast, and loved him and forgot about him. And then a client, reminded me of him, and I think she sent me, a podcast or something. I was like, I know Neil Kramer, and I hadn't listened to him in years. I kind of dropped away from him, but I love it. Now he only makes. I don't really listen to his interviews. I haven't read anything he's written. I know he has, downloadable things on his website that you can buy, and I haven't done any of that. The only thing I listen to are his podcasts. He calls them Roamcasts, and he might only record one or two a year, but they're very well made, and they're on his website. They're free. They're not on iTunes or any of that stuff. He'd have music in them, there's different sections. They're just, I don't want to describe them, but they're just really well made, and he's really easy to listen to. Now, Neil Kramer, I don't agree with everything he says. I don't agree with his politics. I didn't agree with his views on Donald Trump, or on at times the way the world is going. I don't agree with, but I really respect him. He's really easy to listen to. He's just a balanced view. He's someone that I like to listen to, not necessarily someone that I totally agree with. I love the way he does things. Shunya Murti, I've only recently been directed towards, and same like with Neil Kramer, I might listen to one or two of his podcasts a year, or sections of, might listen to a bit, and that's it. I don't, as I've said many times, I don't listen to spirituality podcasts. I listen to economics and political philosophy podcasts, the Tom Woods show. That's what interests me. For spirituality, for me, is something that's extremely personal, and it's internal. So I make a point of not going out there to find my own spirituality. It's something that blossoms within me. It's an inner journey. Now, Shunya Murti, in listening to some of his stuff, and I've listened to very little, I found that I like it. I'm certainly not being critical of it, and it confirms my own. It's very similar. So it was a guide of mine that kind of pointed me in the direction of Shunya Murti, and I don't know how to word it, but really had pointed out how energetically a similar thread or a similar path I was on to his, and it took me many months to actually make the effort and find and listen to some of Shunya Murti's stuff. But when I did, I realized how similar we think. Same thing as Neil Kramer. I don't agree with everything he says. I don't see the world exactly the same as him, but certainly there are some aspects that I've experienced that I would see it very. It's brilliant to hear someone else express how I see the world at times, because often I don't find that. I don't come across it. And the third person, this, my memory's so bad and I didn't write down. Oh yeah, Eckhart Tolle. Same thing. I might listen to one or two or three of his, 10 or 20 minute talks a year. Very rarely. But I have an awful lot of respect for him, and I like his choice of language. He uses the word entities as opposed to, say, reptilians or different, and that's made him very accessible to the world, as opposed to going into detail. Now, whether he has awareness of those details or not, I don't know, but Yeah, I like him. I like the way he speaks. I like his teachings. I like his perspective, and I would try. I see the world in a similar way, and I would try to move more and more in that direction. Then, because I do get asked about Jordan Peterson, so I know, at the time of recording this, which is now February 2021, I know Peterson had quite a rough past 12 months, perhaps. I think he had a kind of breakdown, medication went kind of all over the place, and then I think he ended up in Russia or somewhere to get treatment. Was it a couple of years ago that Peterson made his kind of big breakthrough or thereabouts, and his book, was it 12 Rules for Life, I think? I haven't read it. I haven't read any of his stuff. I've only watched pieces of his over the last, probably about 2 years ago when he broke through, piece of interviews and his talks and stuff online. I would have watched bits and pieces. But around that time, I discovered David Goggins, who was interviewed on the Joe Rogan show. Side note, I'm not a fan of Joe Rogan at all. I'm very skeptical of Rogan, his politics and his views. He sits on the fence with people. I think he's, in a sense, a Pied Piper. Big burly, MMA guy with his tattoos and smoking weed and all that kind of stuff. But really, what he's presenting to people is very wishy-washy stances on things, especially politics and ways of living. Now, everyone, has their good sides and good points, but I'm not a fan of Rogan. I am a fan of his his guests at times. It was interesting to see someone who would bring someone on and be able to talk in depth with people, as opposed to 10-minute interviews, which we're used to from radio or television or that kind of thing. So I thought that was brilliant. But also, I've seen him interview the likes of Michael Malice, who I like, and bring him on for 90 minutes and basically just get stoned and not really hit any heavy subjects at all. I've been annoyed at Malice for that as well, for letting Rogan away with that. People want to be on Rogan's show because he has huge publicity and they're going to sell more books or get more followers. But I think in a sense they can maybe be selling their soul. They're going on to a show with a guy that at times is just not really with it, hasn't done any research on the person, doesn't have any structure to his interviews, and I kind of found that frustrating. So I was never a Rogan follower or consistent listener. I would dip in and out of YouTube, recommended some sort of the odd person here and there. But there is a couple of people that I'll come to at a later stage, and interviews that really changed me. And that there's one in particular that some people know, that a 10 or 14 minute segment that I've watched about 300 times and got an awful lot for. And you might hear the barky dogs are going bananas. They're making an appearance. It's 20 to 8 on a Wednesday evening and the barky dogs are at it. So Jordan Peterson, around that time, when he broke through a couple of years ago, I discovered at the same time David Goggins through the Joe Rogan show. And there was a couple of sections, kind of 30-minute sections of the first David Goggins interview with Rogan. And he talked about, the harshness of his life and growing up black in a racist area and a fucking very brutal father. And then going through the army and becoming, I think it's a Marine or a Navy SEAL. I forget the terminology. And I was fascinated by this guy. So not from any spirituality perspective, but just the fucking will to keep going. And then I bought his book, and I've read his book. I've listened to his book as well a number of times. And I find him fascinating. Now, I find Goggins, in my opinion, has a lot of healing to do. Very destructive in some senses, the way he treated his body in the ultramarathons and so on. Very brutal. But there's a kernel of... So I try to take aspects from people that I can learn. It's not that... Like Neil Kramer, Shunya Murti, or these people. I'm not a fucking follower. I'm not a disciple. I'm not going to do what they say and live how they live. I try to get that across in my own work and my own podcasts and articles and so on. Follow our own instinct. With Goggins, there's great kernels of wisdom. Goggins talks about getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, and I've borrowed that for my own work and working with clients. If we can be comfortable with the discomfort, depression, anxiety, addiction, unhealthy marriage or relationships or these dynamics. Now, I don't mean get comfortable as in like fucking put up with it and wallow in it. I mean get used to the too hot water in a bath. Get used to an ice bath. Get used to a sauna. If we can get used to these things, we can sit in them. We can conquer them and master them. It's the same with those emotions. So Goggins, in a sense, taught me that. You know, he opened up that door. It's very similar to shadow work, very similar perspective. So I certainly took inspiration from him. My point is, around the time Peterson broke through, Goggins broke through. And I noticed a lot of the intellectuals, you know, people that I followed on Twitter and whatnot would go the path of Peterson, and I went the path of Goggins. They were two very different routes. And, you know, very early on, Peterson just did not resonate with me. Far too, in my opinion, far too intellectual, stuck in his mind and analysis and understanding. And my work with people is just trying to get people away from the mind, away from analysis. Analysis does not make us happy. It does not equate to peace. It's oil and water. All that information in the mind is very different from the feeling and the opening of a heart. Like you've got to get to the point where you realize this, where and you know, my cliched explanation is, because it happened to me many times. You know, when I lived in my car and I was crumbling and falling apart, at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, when it's fucking 0 degrees and freezing and you're suicidal, knowing what your purpose in life is, or understanding, I don't know, your fucking childhood, or why this is happening or why that's happening, it buys you about 10 minutes of peace, of relief. 10 minutes. I mean, who fucking cares? No interest. Good luck. You gotta ask yourself. Now, I'm being fucking serious. If you were sat in front of me now, I'd fucking grab you by the shoulders, or you'd have all my fucking eye contact. You gotta ask yourself, genuinely and deeply, and don't even answer this question immediately, but contemplate it. What am I looking for? So, are you looking for understanding of your life? Or are you looking for peace? To live a peaceful, enjoyable life? That's a fucking serious question. There's plenty of people out there who will pass up peace. They want information. They want understanding. Good luck. I'm not the man for you. Jordan Peterson might be, and there's many others out there. I'm not the man. I've been that path. I walked that path. I read all those books. I underlined them and took notes. I watched the documentaries, I analysed them, and I burned out. All the self-help books and all the fucking philosophers and all these great minds, they didn't bring me to peace. Now, I'm not against information or analysis, but it just depends what you're looking for. I'm looking for peace. I'm looking to live on earth and fucking enjoy it. And as I've said many times, the irony is that as I move into the heart and into peace, I get downloads, I gain insights just fucking come through me. Awareness of who I am and what I'm doing here and how to work, and understandings. But if I'm going looking for understandings, thinking they're out there in the book or the world or the guru, I'm looking for them to give me answers. It just has not been my path. It hasn't worked for me. So Peterson for me was someone that very early on I was suspicious of, skeptical of, and I don't mean any disrespect to him, because I know he's had a bad year. You know, I know things crumbled. So yeah, I don't want to be critical, but I do want to be real about Peterson. I knew early on, and I put my voice out there, and I said it to many people, like, I didn't buy this. There was something not right with him. And I can liken it to, as I've talked before about the fucking corona flu, you know, last February, March, when this kind of broke and lockdowns and all that shit started to begin, and masks and all that nonsense. Something in me felt, this is not right. I'm not buying this. There's something wrong. And I'd meet friends and we go for walks or whatever, and they'd say, oh, did you see what's happening? I go, there's something wrong, I'm not buying it. But I had no evidence. I mean, it was just purely my instinct said there's something not right. And then as the week rolled by, we started to see, the figures were manipulated, flu figures disappeared, and so on. You all know this at this stage. And then I felt that awareness of like, my instinct was right. So with Peterson, as time moved on, I started to see this guy is not feeling. He's intellectualizing. And then what broke, I think around, well, for me, what I learned, it could have broke earlier, but what I learned kind of 8 or 10 months ago maybe, or maybe more, I can't remember, was that he was on medication. And I thought, this is interesting. You know, I'm not knocking, I have friends, I'm not knocking friends on medication, I'm not knocking people on medication. You do whatever you can, whatever you have to do to stay alive or to stay balanced or centered. Cool. I'm not knocking that. But this is supposedly this great mind who's lecturing the world on, on psychology and on the state of mind and on Carl Jung and on so on. And yet he has to take medication to remain balanced. I'm just not sure about that. And then we started to see, obviously, that he was falling apart. And that to me would say, from the way I work, that he has all the intellectual understanding of his state and his being and what's happening, but he didn't have the experience. He wasn't living in the heart. He was living in the head, in information. Our journey right now in the world is the heart, to live present in the being. So that's why I, in a sense, over time, my instinct or views on him were confirmed. I've actually recommended his book, 12 Rules for Life. Is it 12? I think it's 12 Rules for Life. I've never read it, but I'm very aware of what's in it. I've watched enough and heard radio shows and all the rest about it. So I've recommended that to some male clients because I've just felt that they were in that area, that kind of growth would be purposeful for them, but not the intellectualization of life. At times, when I get new clients, I'm trying to tell them, please do not read books. During the 8-week course I run, which is a one-on-one shadow work course, do not do any retreats, weekends, courses, nothing else during that 8 weeks. Also no alcohol, no drugs, recreational or otherwise, nothing. 8 weeks. Let's just work with me for 8 weeks. See what happens. After that, you can do whatever the fuck you want. But it's to try, like I get people who have bookshelves full of fucking books, but yet they're falling apart, they're crumbling, because it's the ego's trying to understand what's wrong with me, how do I live? And we live by witnessing consciousness, by witnessing and integrating frequencies that pass through this receptor, this vehicle, this human body, not by intellectualizing them or understanding them. That's irrelevant. Many people ask me about, say, dreams, or what do I think of this, or what do I think of that. Oftentimes I say, I don't have an opinion. I don't know and I don't care. My only interest here is more and more is just to witness. Allow the frequencies to pass through me. Fear, love, hate, anger, whatever it may be. Fucking coffee, I don't care. Allow the frequencies to pass through. That's it. On books I've read, I've been very careful to not speak about the books. It hasn't been an accident. I've had podcasts for 3 years or something. I've never done a show on books that I read or like. I've about 5 books that really deeply changed me. And the reason is nearly every client, almost every client I have, or non-client even, people get in touch and say, what books do you recommend? And if you're asking me what books I recommend, I'm going to tell you, please stop reading books. Stop seeking and searching. That's the first step. Avoid a space of not consuming and taking in loads and loads of information. The solution is not out there. The solution is in you. It's in stillness. What is meant for you, as a good friend says, what is meant for you will not go past you. I don't look for any books, spiritual teachers, gurus, videos, podcasts, any of that. I don't look for any of it. But now and again, someone sends me something that just, I know I have to read that or listen to that. And that's probably, at this stage, it's about once a year, if even. People do send me podcasts and articles and things. 99% of them I don't watch or read, to be honest with you. Or I might look and I know the energy is not for me. Bang, no. Or I might press play, 30 seconds in, not for me, thanks, no. I follow my internal guidance. So if you're seeking books, or if you were a client with me, I would be trying to stop you from reading. Create a space to allow you to communicate with you, to allow you to breathe. There is no magic bullet. There is no magic technique or solution. All it is presence. And as I've said many times, that's just not exciting and sexy enough for people. Or to be more specific, it's not exciting enough for your ego. Your mind wants distraction. It wants a hamster wheel to run on for the next week or 2 weeks. So if I give you a book, you're going to go and buy that book, you're going to read it, the hamster wheel will run and rotate for the next 2-3 weeks. And then you'll be fucking bored and the ego will move on. I want another book. Can you recommend another book to me? No, I can't. So our work is to reclaim power and energy from that ego, from that voice, to not end up, without being too harsh, to not end up like Jordan Peterson. He's worth millions and he's famous. But to not end up in the psychiatric ward in fucking Russia, to not end up with all that energy, all that Kundalini energy rocketing past all your lower chakras and central chakras and arriving in the mind. Because I've been, in a sense, where Peterson is or was. Overactive mind, constantly analysing and thinking. And then gradually to work down into the body. And I have a long way to go, believe me. But to allow that energy to pass through, to flush through these chakras. All of them, root, sacral, they're all extremely important. Not just the fucking mind of overanalysis. So more and more, I don't need energy up there. It's already far too overactive. I want energy in the lower body. I want energy in the heart, in the throat, and so on. So yeah, thanks for listening. If this was of any use to you, you can buy me a coffee. Go to buymeacoffee.com/Spawn Evolution. There's links below for my newsletter and so on. Active on Instagram and whatever. Please share with someone else if this is of use to you. And thanks for listening.